Our 737 from Ottawa approaches Iqaluit, flying across the pack ice of Frobisher Bay. Iqaluit is one of the best equipped airports in the Canadian Arctic, with a long paved runway built by the Americans during the Cold War to service the Dew Line radar stations. There are several medical passengers aboard, returning from treatment in the south. The airport is a great place to meet people, and you often meet people you know. I met a former student clutching his Government of Canada parka tightly. We take a taxi downtown, listening to the crackle of the radio and a soundtrack of taxi music. This section of town is known as the base because it was once part of the American Air Base. The main intersections of downtown Iqaluit are controlled by stop signs. The city doesn't have traffic lights. The roads are snow-packed and the sidewalks crunchy with talking snow. The Nunavut legislature is a key public building, recently completed and well worth a visit. The Anglican Cathedral St. Jude's was vandalized in 2005, destroyed by fire, but it's being rebuilt and will reopen this year. Here is the Nakasuk Primary School, built to function as a communal shelter. The main store in town is the North Mart, which sells most things. Beside it is the recently opened Tim Hortons coffee shop, the first in Nunavut. Great ravens seem to be everywhere. The town's main arena is nearby, together with colourful street art. The airport section is Iqaluit's main industrial section, with a number of businesses and storage facilities. The Canadian military has quarters here, with barracks built by the Harper government which have yet to be used. The town's main tank farm and fuel depot is located in this direction. It's also a district where sled dogs are quartered. Iqaluit has a high tidal range and lacks a deep water port, so the town's supplies, or sealift, have to be landed on the beach. The first ship to arrive in the spring is usually a fuel tanker, and then come 3 scheduled sealifts, landing their supplies on Sealift Beach. Pack ice forms in winter along the shores of the bay. When the tide is in, the pack ice steams as the warmer tidal water mixes with the cold ice. The pack ice bulges and lifts. The steam freezes and creates glare ice. Boats become prisoners of winter. People keep their sled dogs on the beach, and often on the pack ice for the winter. Sealift Beach echoes to the yelp and howl of dogs. This family has come out to feed their dogs. The puppies are enjoying seal meat. Iqaluit has garbage collection. The dump is located on the south side of town, out beyond the airport. It's a fairly primitive open-faced dump with seasonal cover. The dump is currently almost filled, and Iqaluit needs to find another site. In October 2010, there was a stubborn fire in the dump. Being so remote from industry, recycling is rather primitive here, although the ravens do their best. Iqaluit has named streets, and the houses are numbered, but not by street. This is fairly common in Arctic settlements. There's a lot numbering system which is fairly logical, and each building has a number. There have been huge changes in housing in recent decades, with most of the older A-frame houses being replaced with newer structures. Around each home you find accessory outbuildings, sealift shipping containers being reused for other purposes, and dogs on chains. In an effort to prevent land from falling into the hands of outsiders, the government of Nunavut has made it difficult for individuals to own their land in town, so most people have to rent their home. And if you want to own your house, you have to buy the structure, but you can't usually buy the land it sits on. Outsiders call this place Frobisher Bay for a number of years, but the Inuit have always called it Iqaluit, meaning that it was a place with plenty of fish. This is old Iqaluit, a part of town where the place name was first used. It's got a mixed population and the town's main cemetery. Iqaluit has a high suicide rate, elevated infant mortality, and a fairly high rate of accidental death and violent crime. The cemetery, unfortunately, is in constant use. The local undertaker told us that he'd buried 4 suicide victims in the previous 2 weeks. Breakwater Beach is one of the major access points to the pack ice, and people often head out from town and return to it at this point. The breakwater takes you out into Frobisher Bay, where you can get views of the town and you can watch the inbound flights approaching the airport. At certain times of the day, they become frequent. Iqaluit is constantly expanding, with a growing population and a territorial economy growing by perhaps 15% each year. On the hill above the base is one of the newer subdivisions. Jomie Hill is one of the recent housing developments overlooking the downtown. When the Americans built the base at Iqaluit, the Inuit were forbidden to come onto the base. Instead, a settlement for the Inuit was constructed at Apex, a Hudson Bay post some miles outside town. Apex is something of a suburb now, connected by road with its own primary school, Anglican church, and intermittently functioning convenience store. The pack ice of Frobisher Bay is an obvious feature. And the old Hudson Bay post is being preserved. The road to Apex passes through the eastern end of town, through a district known as the Middle School area. Here we find an arena built for the 2002 Arctic Winter Games. It became an embarrassment when the floor collapsed in 2006. Nearby is an important federal communications site and the road to Apex. The middle school area, of course, is named after the middle school. And we found a craft sale going on in the school gym. One of the elders sold us a pair of sealskin mitts with wolf trim. She spoke Inuktitut, but one of the children helped us with the translation. One of the mothers agreed to pose for a photograph with her baby in her amauti. There's new housing close to the school. Most of it is rental, and there's fresh construction too. Iqaluit's main French-speaking primary school, Trois Soleils, is in the same area.
It is a very weird winter because we don't see...
Happy Valley is one of the Iqaluit subdivisions built in the 1990s.
And the sea ice on Frobisher Bay is very treacherous. So with the late winter like we just had, it's even worse. I guess people don't go out that much.
Well, if you have that much of a tidal differential, then the ice won't ever be. Mines seem to be very competitive in this part of the world.
Most of Happy Valley was constructed beyond the reach of the sewer and water supply corridors, the utilidors. This is part of town on tank service, and if you live here, you have to leave a parking spot for the service trucks. One truck brings you water, another truck takes away your sewage. The hills of Iqaluit provide families with toboggan slides, especially on a Sunday afternoon. Out by Brian's house, daring snowmobilers take to hot dogging on the hills. That Canadian favourite, street hockey, is played all over town. Access to alcohol is restricted in Iqaluit. If you want to drink, you have to visit a restaurant and order a meal. This is Friday night in the Kicking Caribou. There's a movie theatre at the Frobisher Hotel, but the choice of films can be a little limited. We had a choice of The Mechanic and Justin Bieber in 3D. Iqaluit is an interesting place to visit. It's a small town of 7,000 or so on the edge of the Arctic, rapidly growing, but racially divided. Provides many of the modern services vital to the creation of a modern territorial government. But that modernity has proven very disruptive to the traditions of the Inuit. The Inuit largely have a secondary role in the modern economy, with a lot of the key technical and professional positions going to outsiders. Outsiders are likely to have the education and the networks to secure key positions for the foreseeable future. It's going to take many decades for the Inuit to see the full promise of Nunavut, but there are signs that some progress is being made.